Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. I'm here with Germans again. Hello, Germans.
Hello again. Nice to see you.
Great to see you, and a nice outfit.
Likewise. I think we are right in the mood.
Yeah, exactly. It's the last LinkedIn Live before Christmas and the Christmas holidays, so really looking forward to this. And this is also the sequel to our topical map LinkedIn Live, which we did like 1.5 months ago.
Yeah, October 30th, I believe.
Exactly, and this is just like the natural continuation of this, going from mapping out all the topics to actually going into work mode and building up the different pages by doing these detailed content briefs. But let's dive into this in a minute. I would just like to welcome everybody. We should be around 150 attendees. Probably some people are busy up to Christmas, so they can see it on their own time later. But for you who are here on the call, really appreciate it. You can just say hi in the chat if you're up for that. Of course, that's also where you can ask your questions. And then if we fit it into the slides, perfect. Otherwise, we'll take it. We're going to go through these questions at the end. Anyway, we're not going to ignore any of the questions here in this live. So, Gems, just to start out, you've been traveling around for the last months, right?
Yes, indeed. It was the biggest trip I ever had in my life so far. So it was like 3 weeks. And the last destination was Thailand. Probably know that's one of the biggest conferences there every year, Chiang Mai SEO conference. So yeah, last week finally came back, and I was never so hungry for going back to my routine. It's just executing and working.
Excellent. But you got a lot of SEO knowledge back in your suitcase, and hopefully some of that you will share with us today. I think maybe we should just go in and share the slide deck. We've planned this for 1 hour, and let's see if we make it. But anyway, I mean, you have how many? You have 60 slides more or less, right, Germans? We're gonna go through.
Close to it, yeah.
Excellent. So let's try to keep it inside 1 hour, and I think take it away.
Sure. So yeah, today we're going to talk about how to create a detailed content brief. And just to go one step back, we had a webinar just like Christopher told, LinkedIn Live in end of October. We talked about how to create a topical map, which is kind of the first and one of the most important steps in this framework. And then in one of the last slides, I believe in that LinkedIn Live, we mentioned that, but it's just a start. After you have created topical map, you need to also create topic content briefs, and then also write according to semantic rules, and also configure continuously content after you have published that content.
Yeah, so that was the cliffhanger from the last session, and now we're here.
Now we're here. And agenda for today is the following. So we'll talk about the definition of the content brief, my personal evolution of the content briefs, and what does it include now, the importance of the content brief, the process steps, and also some examples, and also the importance of query templates, document templates, and content brief templates. And then maybe we'll do a cliffhanger again for next time.
Yeah, and I think it's also important here when you talk about what is a content brief, that we actually talk about what are people doing wrong or maybe missing out on today. Because I, for sure, when I look at what the details, the level of details that you work into your content briefs, it's just like, okay, I feel like a newbie. And I've seen agency work for the last 8 years, and they're all newbies according to this level of detail. But we also know, both of us, we know how important this level of detail actually is in today's world of winning with SEO in 2025. So perhaps we could talk a little bit about that when we talk about what is a content brief.
Yep. Maybe before that, if anyone wants the slides, I think how Christopher says, say yes in the comments, and then we'll deliver those later to you as well. But yeah, let's talk about content briefs and what it is. So actually, yeah, before that, maybe I forgot about this slide. So quickly about me. Yeah, actually, I'm a digital marketer, but moving more into SEO in the last years, and we are also organizing Copenhagen SEO meetups. And also, as you know, maybe from the topic of this whole conversation, it's loving topical authority semantic SEO, specifically also the framework that Koray Tugbar-Kuber kind of like pioneered a few years ago. That being said, finally about then the content briefs. So what those are. So a content brief is a detailed document, let's say, that provides structure and clear instructions for writers, or you, if you're the writer, that serves as a guide to create a web page content before the initial post draft. It's a very basic definition, but basically outlining every single aspect of content that you're going to produce in short, in a shorter, more concise way. I would define it like that.
Yeah, and that sounds fine, and everybody thinks that they're doing it right, because a typical content brief will be title, meta description, H tags. This is H1, H2, H3. These are our 3 primary keywords. There should also be maybe an image with an alt tag. There should be some internal linking, and of course we have to define the search intent of the page. But I think that's also about it. That's about it. You can of course correct me in the chat out here, but that's what I'm seeing when I'm seeing deliverables to clients, when I see what other agencies have provided, and it will of course get you some of the way, but I'm not sure that it's going to take you very far in 2025.
And also, maybe I could run through my evolution of the content briefs. And actually, this is, you can maybe, some of you recall that, I mean, that's how I started, just the topic, the title, the word count, and then maybe some SEO keywords. I mean, to be honest, I didn't start like that, but I saw some people even using such kind of content briefs. But I hit a period when I started developing very detailed ones, including like the admin details, the brand details, the content details, including the outline and structure of the content, as well as, so what is the audience, what are the keywords. Here's a link to an SEO surfer report and many other things. So that was a phase, but then now here we are. This kind of brief where, let's say, again, I'll credit the source for the whole inspiration behind it in a bit, but this is let's say, the structure where we're using actually a spreadsheet, and then we specify the headings, heading levels, content methodology or article methodology or contextual structure. There are many ways or names to it, but for each section we specify exactly what needs to be written in what way, in what order, and many other details are specified there, alongside also internal links and anchor text that can be used for internal linking. That's the row number 4, let's say, on the right side, that is not visible here. And there are also some other details, but let's say these 4 are the main ones.
And just Germans, if we look back at your history of content briefs, where you went from very simple detail to very detailed content briefs, I mean, what did you actually? I mean, the detailed content brief looks impressive, but what was that actually missing when you compare it to the core framework?
I was missing this kind of organization where for each section it's very clear what needs to be written. You can see the complete picture, like a bird's eye view. You see all the headings and so on one view. So that was very easy to spot, and also where to internally link and what is the distance between links between the headings and so on. What is the prominence of that section compared to the whole article, for example. While here it's just a Word document, let's say, and that visibility is lacking. And then again, I realized that also so many unnecessary elements here that more or less after a few briefs completed with a writer, these elements are going to be like understood. What is the audience, and what kind of things to use, and what kind of things to adhere to from brand perspective, and other things. So a lot of information is just like redundant, let's say, not that much necessary anymore after a few articles. And going forward, let's say, just to summarize, what does the detailed content brief include according to this framework also? So it's the heading levels, what to write in each section and in what order, which key phrases to prioritize, which sentence structures to use, also multiple guidelines for lists, tables, visuals, different design elements if you're using them, instructions for internal links and anchor texts, and there are many other details.
And this is, of course, this is a lot to take in, of course, but we are going to go into these different specifics from a little bit later, right?
Yeah, and they're going to be repeated, and also they're going to be examples. So I hope it's going to be clear and easier to understand going forward. But why is it important? I think coming from the first step, it ensures that every piece of content actually aligns with the broader topical map. That's why it's very important that one person actually creates a topical map, and then the same person ideally then creates content briefs, because then you'll ideally see already how everything needs to be connected. And then with content briefs, you just ensure that everything is actually connected. In a way, you are creating a knowledge base. So if you're creating it, you be sure to understand what is connected to what, in what way, from which article to which article, and so on. Then ensure that content comprehensively covers the whole query network. We'll talk about that later as well. Integrating all the relevant entities and attributes for any given topic that you're writing about. Also ensuring that the content satisfies both primary and secondary user intents. It's not always about just one intent, there could be multiple ones. Also, it ensures that the content relevance and responsiveness is the best it could be for every user query. Hence, we are providing so many specific details about exactly what an answer should include, in what order, in what sentence sequence, and so on. And also, it just reduces ambiguity. And even though you might think that, hey, it's a lot of detail, but in theory, it should streamline the content production process, especially if you start using content item brief templates. It actually makes your process smoother, faster, better, compared to, let's say, more traditional methods.
Yeah. And of course, this is a lot to take in if you haven't seen this kind of briefs before. But I think also what is reflected in this is actually, on one side, we want to create user-friendly content, but on the other side, we want to create machine-friendly content as well, right? And there's really a level of skills that you need to understand in order to please the machine as well, because it's a lot about economy, right? It's a lot about making it easy for the machine to understand, or Google to understand what our content is about. So I think this is just for anyone out there where it just makes it's a lot of different definitions they haven't heard before. I think it's just important to understand that there's a lot of engineering as well in this kind of briefs.
And even to the point that, like, even if you change the word order it's going to change the understanding of the sentence. And if you multiply that across 1,000 sentences, it's going to change the understanding of your website to a quite a big level. That's why for a machine to understand what you're talking about, the actual order of words matters a lot from the NLU perspective and other things.
We actually, we had an SEO hacks LinkedIn Live some time ago where Torbjørn Flinsted, he was participating, and one of his hacks was actually that when he wanted to win a featured snippet, he actually did like 2 versions to win the featured snippet, where he's like building the sentences in a different way. So this is just also like this thing of how to structure your sentences is really essential.
Also the content format, right? If you can provide the same answer in a paragraph, table, list, it can also increase the likelihood of triggering the feature snippet. So that could be.
Definitely. I mean, I remember one of the wine articles I did recently, there wasn't a featured snippet already for my table, but it just, it just, when I found out, okay, it's much better to create a table for this, I just won the featured snippet right away. So it was like a gap, you can say a content gap in Google.
It's a structured data that Google can understand much easier than your sentence, right? And also, I would like to quote you, Christopher, as well, that each content brief actually does matter, and one perfect page can actually kind of make up for 9 bad ones. Even though ideally we want to achieve consistent quality across all the entire domain, sometimes there are ways how you can create lower quality content as long as you don't show it that often. There are ways to save costs, but ideally, of course, you would want to achieve the quality everywhere.
I don't think I was the first one to say it. Maybe 9 out of 10. Maybe that was my number. But again, I think it's just important to emphasize that the fundamental level of quality of your content has to be quite high, and it doesn't matter even if you make a topical map, you have everything in place, and you actually say, okay, there's actually like only 2 out of these 10 guides, or 1 out of these 10 guides, which is really has a lot of traffic volume. So I'm going to focus on that one, and then we're just going to do the other ones with my left hand, right? It really reflects on all the content if you don't have a reasonable level of quality in your content.
Value per page, that's a very important concept as well, and it does indeed matter. But going forward, maybe to the most important part here, about content brief creation process. And before I do that, again, and always, I want to credit really the inspiration behind this whole framework and why, let's say, it changed my whole process. Thanks to Corey, who is the also creator of the course, topical, Semantic SEO course for Topical Authority. And this is really where I took the whole inspiration behind my process now, adjusted it a bit, and that's what I'm going to show you now. But also, the whole, maybe you can also say some words about the course. It kind of opened up the whole like black box of SEO in a way, how all search engines work, and it provided some tools on how to structure these processes from topical map creation to content briefs.
I think it's just like this course is really essential to any serious SEO. It's like we've been focusing so much on maybe secondhand information. This is like really trying to engineer Google, really try to understand what Google is about. When the terms we've used in the industry for something which Google calls something totally else. This is really what you're really getting your the right definitions in here of what things are and how everything is constructed. And it has also upgraded my mindset. Taking this course, it has really added to the skill level. I would say, probably this year has probably been one of the years where I really have upgraded my skill level, and this is in particular has been central to that part. So I can really recommend this course.
And now, let's say, even though the process is more extensive than this, I tried to summarize this into 10 steps. Else we should have maybe multiple webinars just talking about each of these steps. But I'll run briefly now through these steps, and then we'll go through each of them with more examples. But the process involves analyzing the SERP, extracting the relevant data from the SERP, because a lot of actually data is already given to you if you're, let's say, open-minded. Then picking the right competitors, extracting the competitor organic ranking keyword data, extracting also the terms match, let's say report, or the terms match queries for the target topic, analyzing the queries and generating questions from those queries, ordering the questions, and then also assigning the heading. Ordering the questions or headings. I'll connect the dots with the heading and question, why is it like that, in a bit. But after that, assigning the heading levels, writing the content methodology, and lastly, specifying internal links and also the anchor text that you're going to be using for those internal links. So with number one, maybe before we go into step number one, we could just briefly summarize, like give an example that this example of a content brief is also going to be for your website, Danish Wines, and maybe you could give a definition of the website.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, as everyone knows, Danish wine is the best wine in the world, or it will probably be one day. But I have decided to do a side project regarding Danish wine, selling the best bottles from my website, danishwine.com. So it was just obvious for Germans to use this site as an example of a content brief. So yeah, that's my Danish wine site.
And back to step number one about analyzing the SERP. And in this case, the topic that I decided to, let's say, use was the types of wine glasses. And once I typically use a tool like a Valentine.app to just get a localized SERP. You can also use, I think, Nightwatch is another extension that does a similar thing. And then start analyzing what is appearing. Do you have product pages, product category pages, shopping carousels? That would dictate probably that's a very much commercial intent. Or you maybe have articles, knowledge panels, things to know panels, PAAs, and images and videos, which would dictate that probably it's going to be more informational type content. Maybe also some kind of multimedia is going to be involved in that, which you're also going to have to then include either on your page or also maybe create a YouTube video, for example. Then after that, we would then extract the data that we see on the SERP. That would include, for example, the page titles that people also ask, people also next sections, things to know, related searches, search refinements, image search refinements, description, and other sort of features. Whenever Google releases something, I think it's worth checking out what it is, and maybe we could use that for our advantage. And on the right-hand side, you can just see that I took information from all of these things and just copy-pasted them into the spreadsheet, from PAAs to search refinements and to other things. So all this information is then kept.
And just to go back, James, I mean, when you're doing this, you also have your own projects. I mean, are you surprised sometimes with what you're getting out of the extracting the SERP, or is it like, okay, I knew all this already?
Yeah, of course, if I don't know the topic, sometimes I might be surprised, and even surprised to the point that like I would like think, how can I connect even these things, and what do these things mean? But once I later stage start analyzing the queries, then you can see the connections. You can see the queries in a longer form, let's say, and then you actually realize, okay, these are the type of questions that users want, and hence the SERP actually showed these kind of refinements. So it becomes a much clearer picture once you analyze more query data later on.
Cool.
And here just a visual representation of some of these things, like the search refinements and PAAs and image search refinements and so on, just to give an example, also the visual example of how these things look. And yeah, all these things actually give you a lot of data if you are taking into consideration them. Then next step would be to pick your competitors. Ideally, I like to choose 2 to 4 top ranking competitors. And also ideally, if you do have a website that you want to be associated with and initially outrank, you also want to pick that one established website with whom you want to be classified with and eventually outrank. And in this example, yeah, let's say these two, Wineware and Webster Store, those would be competitors that I picked when analyzing this particular topic and creating content brief.
No wine drinking before pronouncing that website.
That might be true. A step after that is, once we have the competitors, once we analyze the SERPs, would be to extract the competitor organic ranking keywords or query data. And for that, you can just go to a tool like Ahrefs, SEMrush, go to their organic keywords report and plug in the URL, and then see what kind of keywords these competitors are ranking for. And all I do then there is just export all these keywords, and I keep columns like the keyword, volume, position, and the URL of that competitor, which you can see on the right-hand side. After that, I also like to extract exact, or not exact, but like terms match keyword report also for the topic. And it probably is going to be hard to see here, but the input into Ahrefs keyword research report or tool was types wine glass and types wine glasses, just to be able to capture all the different variations of types of wine glasses type phrases. And after that, get the keywords, and then before exporting, I like to enable group by terms. What it does is upon the export, it will put in these keywords into different groups depending on the term that they include. And then in the raw export, you actually get a very nicely sorted, let's say, table with the most frequent, with the term group, which is the most frequent, or the term that appears the most frequently, and also the secondary sort is kind of like the volume of each of the keywords in that group. And what it allows me to do is quickly go through all of these keywords in a matter of minutes. I can analyze, let's say, 4,000 keywords in a fast way in 20 minutes and capture all the most important context just by having this, let's say, term group enabled. That's my workflow. That's something that I decided, hey, why not do? And it is helpful.
Yeah, but I guess you can also use a tool like Keyword Insights for the grouping.
And here, I want to elaborate here. It's actually, some people also said that to me, but this kind of grouping is a basic regex filtering. It's not SERP-based clustering, which is very much dependent on the algorithm and so on. Here, all I do is just group these keywords just based on the word that they include, nothing else.
Yeah, I think that will definitely also do the job, doing some regex formula.
Yeah. After that, we basically get all the data, the competitor ranking data, and all the other data. For example, the terms match report. You can see a quick view on how this big dump of data looks like. But then what you do next is you start to analyze this data. But before I continue, I want to say that I'm not a wine expert, at all.
That comes as a complete shock. But anyway, I think the method is not about being an expert, a field expert, right, or industry expert.
Exactly.
I mean, it's more about getting the right data in there and trying to understand the data.
And this is what I primarily focus on, as shown also in this slide. For example, I start looking for the patterns and the keywords that are most frequently appearing and competitors are ranking the highest. And I see red wine. Then I check how often it occurs. It's more than 770 times. Then probably it's going to be my first heading. After that, white wine, right? It's probably going to be my second heading. So we look at the data and what competitors are ranking for, what is the occurrence or the frequency and the search volume of each of these keywords. That's how we can start constructing headings.
And you could probably also do some word clouds if you wanted to see what are the most typical terms out there.
Exactly. That's a good point. Also, given that I'm not a wine expert, and given that it's a list-based article, it's a listicle, it means that we're going to have to, basically list items. And to get a little bit more knowledge about this topic, I decided, hey, I'll just go to image search and start searching for different types of wine glasses. I took these two infographics and two more infographics, and then with the help of ChatGPT, just asked, hey, just extract all these different wine glasses into a list, and then maybe give me a more comprehensive list. And are there any wine glasses missing? Please add them if they are, and so on. And I got a comprehensive list of wine glasses.
Yeah. And I did this article, and I definitely missed out on this area. So that's something I will add to it. Somebody is asking if you have any questions out there, just simply ask them, and we will put them in when if it makes sense in the slides. Otherwise, we'll have them at the end at the FAQ. So any questions, and I think there's a lot of questions here. Don't be shy. Just ask the question in the chat.
Yeah, but once we have the a raw list of incrementally listed items here, red wine, white wine, and so on, then we need to analyze again. Let's say if it would be a definitional type article, of course, I would heavily focus on analyzing queries, and that's it. But since it's a listicle, I'll have to take the list items, right? And it could be from my own knowledge or from images like I just showed, or maybe sometimes even Google shows you like a search feature where you have actually types of things and it's already all given. So you can use that as an inspiration. If you just Google now types of interest rates, you will see a huge list of 20 or so types of interest rates that Google itself is giving you, and you could use that as a for your headings. But going back
do you see when you see searches for different types of something, who actually wins?
That's a very good. The ones that writes the most comprehensive article with the most detail and with. I can give a definition of a perfect article. But
of course, it's important to have the authority as well. First, have the topical authority just be considered as one of the ones who are able to win. I think that's where people get it wrong, that they think they can do the most comprehensive guide without really having the topical authority. That coming back to again doing 9 bad articles for one great one, or having a quality level which is not very very high. But I also agree with you on this, German, that it's like doing the most extensive one is probably the one who's going to win.
And agreeing with you as well that it's not just about one article, it's multiple articles, and also links matter, and the whole the brand matters as well. All those things all come into play. But going back to here, after we have, let's say, created a list of in our example, we already created a list of headings, but typically you would still analyze the queries and try to group queries with the same meaning, because there are going to be many keywords or queries basically saying the same thing. You just need to group them and find out which is the most important one for that meaning, and then use that, let's say, your heading. Then transform the queries into headings and questions if it makes sense, because the question, by putting them into questions, you basically Google possible question and answer pairs, which is going to again help them to match those instead of them doing the work.
Germans, I'm just going to present you with a question here which fits into this idea of setting up the headings. How do you actually set this order of headings? You did mention something about red wine glasses, there being more searches for red wine glasses than white wine glasses. Does that also mean that that's your order of headings?
Yes, and step number 7 is going to answer that question.
Okay.
So in a second. But also, after transferring the queries into headings and questions, then we would also try to address the whole query network, not just look at, let's say, the top 10 keywords that competitors are ranking for, but really going through the whole list and capturing all those meanings. Then also, if you do not have that much data, or if you're lacking data, then you could also consider lexical semantics and lexical relations. But I wouldn't say if you do lack data, but in any case, you should always consider them. They are helpful. If, for example, you see some kind of question with a man, that maybe it could be also important to answer the same question with a woman, for example. If you have something about related to cat, and if you're talking about animals, then of course also you should mention a dog and so on. Then considering entity classes, for example, if you're writing an article about cars, if you see in queries you see Audi, Nissan, then probably you should also mention BMW, Toyota, and so on. Also, you could consider lemmatization, so having different formats of the word, or different forms. If you're talking about benefits, maybe you could have a question about benefiting, what is a beneficial for X, Y, and Z, and so on. And also, of course, focus on the search intent, and specifically the verbs and the predicates that people use when searching for that topic. Are they trying to optimize and streamline that? Probably that should also be reflected in your headings and also maybe in the title. So all these things can be considered.
That's also where word clouds are actually interesting to use as a visual reminder of
absolutely
what terms to use.
Yeah, and then to answer the question, ordered headings. And here, the prioritization, let's say, criteria I like to follow are occurrence or frequency. The higher the frequency or occurrence, that means that's more important. Also, the search volume, if the search volume is higher, that's more important, or search demand, how sometimes we refer to it. Competitor organic rankings, if the rankings are higher for competitors for these specific, let's say, groups of queries with the same meaning, then that's more important. And also how relevant that is to your source context and towards what your business is doing, what your website is trying to, let's say, do and monetize their actions.
Just a question about this, because I mean, of course, the source context for my website is Danish wine, so it has a lot to do with white wine, sparkling wine, not less with red wine. Would you consider giving more emphasis to white wine glasses because it's closer to the source context, even though the red wine glasses has a larger search volume or a higher frequency?
That's a very good question. That's where your expertise comes in. And I would consider that. Yeah.
Okay, but I think that's a super important point because again, source context. What is your website about? What is it that you want to achieve with content like this, which is outer context, right? I mean, what connection does it have to your source context or your core? That's really that's really, for me, it's really been the essence of understanding all this about topical mapping and content briefs.
And there's going to be a good question also in in the final content brief about how you can connect actually then to your source context, even though maybe you might not be selling wine glasses, how to connect back to wine and so on.
Great.
And according to all these, let's say, criteria, you would place the higher priority headings earlier in the content, and also you would, of course, assign higher heading levels to them from H2s, H3s, for example. And just to give an example, so here after that raw list, I started to restructuring mostly based on demand. And so maybe comparing left to right, you can see that I shifted the rosé wine with sparkling wine because those had much higher search demand compared to rosé wine, for example. And then I switched some other specific type of wine glasses, like maybe you're going to help me here with pronunciation, but Bourdonnais. I switched with Pinot Noir.
For this one, you need red wine for this for this pronunciation.
I'm sticking with the coffee for now. Yes, and then also added as on the right, you can see other let's say questions and headings. How does the type of wine influence the choice of wine glass? And this is where we connected back to the different wines and what you're selling, for example. And then we have H3s with different wines, and then we'll have this connection from wine glass back to your source context wines, and then we will explain that connection there.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting and a good point, German. It's not something I've had in my existing article, but it's definitely something I'm going to implement.
And one of the few last steps would be to assign heading levels. And again, similarly, you would distribute these heading levels from H2 to H6 in a logical and hierarchical way, considering the importance of each heading, going back to the previous step, right? And again, higher level, of course, means more important, and you can actually de-emphasize some of the less important content sections with lower headings. And also about internal links, important to know that links within sections that are higher up of the page do pass more value. So do make sure to pay attention to where you link. What is your first link? If it's something unrelated, then that's probably not the best thing to do. And also be strategic with link placement based on the heading levels. If you're putting a level under a section with a lower heading level, it's going to give more value to that page, and so on.
Are you going deeper into internal linking in this?
I will just show one example, but not that much deeper.
Okay, exactly. Otherwise, ask the questions out there if you have anything about internal linking.
Then this is just a summary of how that content brief looks like from the heading level perspective. You can see H2s, H3s, And then let's say the last H2 would be what does the type of how does the type of wine influence the choice of wine glass, and then we connect it back to different wines. And then we also have some other questions about what are the different parts of wine glass, how to hold, how much wine can you pour, how big is the standard pour, how much to fill in a wine glass, and how many glasses in a bottle of wine. And then depending on depending on that bottle and wine and a wine glass, there are going to be different number of glasses.
And could this also just be part of a FAQ section, the last
Yeah.
part, the
If
H6?
you want to like tie let's say parallels to the traditional way of doing, let's say, content briefs and the traditional like content let's say article templates, it could be like considered as an FAQ. Yeah.
Okay.
Then one of the last steps would be to write content methodology, and this is the most detailed part. And the goal there is to provide clear instructions for authors or yourself, detailing exactly what to write where. Again, like I mentioned, like format guidelines, whether it's a paragraph, whether it's a list, whether it's an ordered or unordered list, if it's a table, maybe what kind of table outro there could be, what kind of visuals, the structure, what kind of research number statistics should be mentioned, what kind of terms should be mentioned, and the different sentence structures used. And you can even go that far that you can analyze each competitor's section and make sure that your content is more enriched, provides more detail per section with more accurate information and more responsive information to the question, meaning the words are worded in a way that's going to be most understandable for the machine to understand what you're talking about.
And if I remember well, Cora had a lot of custom GPTs to each being an expert in one of these bullet points, right?
Yeah, I think most of these he has, and I think he really streamlined the process to the point that like if the staff has a question, you can just use that GPT instead and get the answer, for example. And also before writing this content methodology, when I was going through the list of keywords, I noted down these things like names of different wine glasses, shape, wine, uses, sizes, style, picture, infographic, differences between the wine glasses, also how many, let's say, ounces there are in a wine glass, and what category does that wine glass, let's say, fall into, long stem, short, stemless, and so on. All of these things have been considered when then finally creating the content methodology for each section. And you can see that, for example, when defining each wine glass, we could have, of course, definition, including the common names, the characteristics of the wine glass, including the style and shape. Which wines does this wine glass is best suited for, and how does the wine glass enhance the certain wine experience? Also, the typical capacity range for the wine glass, differences compared to other ones, and also some specifications about what kind of alt text does this wine glass should have. Of course, most of it is common sense, but then again, some of these things can be missed. So again, by analyzing all the keywords and most important attributes, all of this data could be collected and then specified in a brief for writers or yourselves then to follow in the right order. And last step finally then is to specify the internal links and anchor text. And again, it's very important to understand the overall topical map. By creating topical map, you will already understand what topic should be linking to which one. And then when it comes to content brief creation, you will already know those things. But there are some, let's say, rules that, of course, include one internal link per section. On a very rare occasion, you might include two. Generally, fewer links at the top of the page and more links at the top of the page, at the bottom of the page. And the first internal link is very important. That passes the most link value and relevance, and ensuring that also the relevant appropriate anchor text is used for every internal link.
And also, when you say section, do you mean page or do you mean a
section of the page? Let's say the heading that separates with the heading.
So how do you define? You define the section by a heading. So no matter if it's an H2, H3, H4.
Yeah. So let's say under H3, let's say that's a section. That's, let's say, how I refer to it, per section where under which you have above which you have a heading up until the next one.
How much do you link from your own project? I mean, what has been your rule?
Yeah, I think I didn't have more than 5 links for the whole article. I mean, if it's like a listicle, of course, if I have like 15 types of X, I will probably link 15 times to all those things if I have the individual pages created for each type of that X, let's say. So that could be the most, but typically in the definitive type articles when I just define something, then I wouldn't have that many links. I think 5 was the most I had typically. Yeah, and again, following more or less the same principles about linking, yeah, one time from each section and so on. Not every time, but not linking more than once from a section. And example here is like this one. For example, you have a question about how does the type of wine influence the choice of wine glass. You have H3s with different wines, and then you have also links to then to a specific page about red wine, for example, white wine, sparkling wine, rosé, and dessert wine from each individual section. So if it would be an e-commerce store where you would sell wine glasses, of course, it would make sense to link to each wine glass that you're describing higher up. But since you are not doing that, we created this connection to link everything back to specific wine, and how it connects to the specific wine glass that is being used to consume that wine. And just to summarize that nothing is really random here. Every heading, paragraph, anchor text, list item, sentence before and after the listing, and many other things do matter. And just to summarize, that's really the essence of, let's say, the microsemantics, and not necessarily microsemantics, but some parts of it that, like, you want to specify all these details, because at the end of the day, if you dig deeper into also how machines understand every sentence, they do matter. Maybe not per that one sentence, but if you multiply that for all the articles that you have, then it definitely it's going to give a difference.
Yeah. So regarding sentences, James, if we're talking about type of wine, was there something you noticed there regarding the sentence structure which I could benefit for in my project?
I would not be able to tell from top of my head now, but if we go to the content brief, I think I specified a few things on how things should be defined in quotation marks, and typically in quotation marks, those are the sentence structures. I think simple things like when describing a capacity for each wine glass, you'd want to specify from, to, in ounces, in milliliters, and so on. So that would be a part of the sentence structure, or at least the sequence that should be used.
Yeah, and it sounds like a small detail, but it makes a huge difference if you want to win a featured snippet, for instance, right? So I think I think it's just one of these examples of why we're sitting here today talking about something and really going that much into depth with content briefs.
And an example of this content brief is there, and it's also linked. And if somebody wants the slide, then the person could have a look at it. And also, there are some other screenshots. But just to summarize that, just by examining the queries isn't enough. Having domain expertise is very important. That's why I would say that the data plus domain expertise, that's really the winning combination. So in this whole, let's say, example of a content brief, I was not an expert. I only looked at the data and had LLMs to help me to kind of try to make sense of this topic. But already now, I think it was an okay work, but still could be improved with a expert sitting next to me.
But I would say the LLM as the expert, that's something which easily can be done. I'm not very much a wine expert myself, but I do use different methods in order for me to create very informative content. I would actually say some of the best content in the business when it comes to having a wine knowledge or domain expertise. So before the LLMs, it was a lot harder, but I think that's also where we have to understand the transition of the advantage of AI tools for that part. So that's I would say we're breaking new ground here when it comes to actually going in and understanding industries.
And I believe with the T method, I think you did have an experience or expertise, but you were just using it from others, right?
Yeah, probably, yes. No, I mean, I have a lot of first-hand expertise with the wine, with the wine drinking, drinking Danish wine. I can always have an opinion about the wine, but definitely you also want the real experts, the real wine experts' opinion.
And maybe the last concept to describe here, again, it would be about query templates, document templates, and content brief templates. This is also the slide from the last LinkedIn Live that we did about topical maps. You can read the definitions here, but the query template, that's basically a search pattern with order phrases. Then the document template would be a predefined format that is used to organize information, signaling the purpose of the page based on its layout and design elements. And the content brief template, just like very similarly to what we described, what the content brief is, it would be outlines specific detail and guidelines for certain content, that's the most heavy, let's say, term here, in a consistent and efficient manner. And a very popular example would be a how-to query, which follows a query template. Then typically for these kind of queries, you would have a document template where you have an H1 with a how-to, let's say, type question, and then each H2 would start with a verb, for example. And then for this kind of document template, you would also have a content brief template, again, like what we discussed today, defining exactly what to say in each section, in what order, and also specifying certain details that should be mentioned there. And speaking of another, let's say, example for your website, since we also talked about vineyards, I think a content brief template could be used for that purpose. And I also created like a let's say content brief template with the use of LMs again, because I'm not an expert. And also there was a big lack of data looking at different vineyards in Denmark. Of course, you could also use maybe some international ones to understand what are the search behaviors, what are the reoccurring topics, and so on. But in this case, I just used LLMs and try to create content brief to cover things like what is X vineyard, for example, name, where is it located, what does it, what is the history actually also of this vineyard, and also what does it offer, specifically from the perspective of what kind of wines, what kind of grape varieties there are, what are the characteristics of this wine, can you have wine tastings in this place, what about dining, and also then how to then purchase these wines. So that's a template that could be considered for these type of pages.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Also goes without saying that I've built pages for every vineyard out there, and they are definitely not as detailed as this one is. So I will definitely see if I can expand on it. I would also say that sometimes it depends on the competition. If the vineyard is the only competitor, you're not going to pass them. Probably not. But then it's not so important to do such a detailed brief, I would say, in order to rank at the top. But of course, in some cases, just like, okay, I'm on page 2 for this vineyard. This is where definitely something much more detailed needs to be done in order for me to rank. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I have seen examples actually where we outranked the brand that we are trying to describe just by having better content than them, or that is also, let's say, more detail following these rules and so on. So I wouldn't say it's definitely harder, and it definitely depends on the competition, but these things are also possible.
Yeah, but I've also seen the easiest way to beat the vineyard is when they don't have a website. I can get a 50% CTR for their brand.
Absolutely. But yeah, this is an example, and I hope you also then your free time have a look at it and see what you think, and whether you could use parts of it as well on your project. And
for sure.
Also then, so what's next? Actually, We talked about topical map, talked about how to create a content brief, and specifically the process heavily inspired by Corey that I adopted to my workflow at the moment. It's current, but then again, in a couple of months, it's probably going to change again, as we are always improving. The next step is to write content according to content writing rules of this framework, and also continuously configuring this content and optimizing it, because like every let's say 3 to 6 months you will get the Google Search Console data, and it's most likely sure that you have missed something. Most likely you made some mistakes in your content item brief template and so on, because we all make estimates and guesses based on the data that we have, and we know that data in these tools are all just estimates. So once we actually then get our Google Search Console data, then we can start configuring. And the beauty of templates is that once you see the patterns across multiple pages, you can just update certain things of this template and then apply to all those pages and see immediate, let's say, boost in rankings from that perspective. And also specifically about the last point about continuously configuring, I got this slide from Chiang Mai, from also Korai. I hope that's fine. That topics aren't static, neither are quality and historical data thresholds. And an example here is from 2021, where an article had less detail. It was enough to rank, but now in 2024, it required more detail, more types to be listed, defined, and explained and connected to other things. So search behaviors are moving, and data that you get is it's worth analyzing it and then continuously configuring content according to that data. Also,
I think one thing we're focused on is very much the seasonal data. How Google changes the intent during the year. But I mean, it's also about increased competition, and that you really need to, if you want to stay on the top of Google. I mean, you have to configure your content.
and also the understanding of the topic from Google's perspective also changes over time. So it might again, like for example, some things in the world happened, right? And then all of a sudden this topic is connected to the other topic. So yeah, not just search behaviors, but also understanding of topics from Google's perspectives are changing.
Yeah.
And maybe lastly, I just want to say also thank you to my cohort group. I had a dry run of this presentation this last Sunday. They gave me some good tips also how to connect, for example, wine glasses to wine as well. That was not my initial idea, but I'm very thankful for that whole course in the community, and the fact that we can always learn from each other and support each other for knowledge sharing and other things as well. And if you want to also go, I think, deeper into this whole content brief creation, I recommend you watch this video. It's almost 4 hours, but Harry is a very good friend and a very smart individual and a successful business person who also has this knowledge of this framework, and who also then shows in this video how he approaches content brief creation.
Cool, very cool. And it's only 4 hours, so it's 5 hours less than your last one.
Exactly.
All right, we have a lot of questions out here, James. I think that's it could be cool to maybe to go through these different questions. Just 1 second here. I'm just gonna close down this one here. So let's take some here from about internal links here. So Norman is asking about many links in macro context.
Many links depends
few
on the
links,
type of
I guess.
article, right? I think if we're talking about types of article, when you have a page for every single type, then you could link. But then again, typically you would have less links in the macro context, maybe a couple to the most important pages that you want to rank, and then more in the supplementary content area or towards the bottom of the page.
Yeah. Let's take this. I think it will just be like random, but
Questions. I mean, depends on type of article. If it's like a definitive article, then probably you'll have what is the importance, what is the purpose of X, how does the process work. So you'll have questions in that micro context of these type of articles. But if it's a listicle, typically you would not have questions. You would have more questions, like in our example for types of wine in the supplementary content area.
Yeah, so you had like this, what type of wine glasses are there, and then you will have more like a listicle of the different types of wine glasses, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Christian. So I might have missed a step, but did you begin with creating headlines from the extracted term match?
Not only terms match, but I also considered that, but it was mostly from organic rankings of competitor or organic keywords that competitors are ranking for. That's how you would start to understand what kind of things I need to address, and then from those create headings.
Perfect.
But the terms matches also could be used. Yeah, definitely. But also terms match, typically it's going to be a little bit more distant from the main topic sometimes, but it gives you good hints on what kind of internal links then to create and maybe what type of other pages to create. For example, if there is a page about, I don't know, X, Y, and Z types, and then you have in terms match, some kind of other query would be appearing about X, Y, and Z benefits. So maybe you'll have a page for the benefits, and you could just create a heading. So what are the benefits of X, Y, and Z, and then have a link to that benefits page.
And there you would just do a small section and then link into the benefits page.
Exactly.
But we're running through with these questions a bit quick. So, but anyone, if somebody has an additional question to this, then of course just ask them. Highlight the main points how we decide when to separate two articles or bind it into one, while SERP have mixed results.
If it has a mixed results, I'll probably have one article, and that's maybe generally a good point to start with fewer. And if you see that you need to create that second page or that other one, that you would create it. But definitely, if it's a mixed result, if it's blended, then you could create just one, and that would be enough. If you cover both contents.
I think mixed results is also about the different formats showing in the SERP, where, a category page, a product page versus an article. Of course, mixed result could also be B2C and B2B intents mixed together.
That's a perspective I didn't think about. Yeah, but in that perspective, probably you would see that you have 3 or 4 spots that you are competing against of the same type of page that you have. So yeah, those are the real competitors that you would be competing with.
Yeah, but your starting point is actually to start with one article and see how it goes, right?
Yeah. If in doubt about whether to create 1 or 2 pages, then start with one, and then you can always break it down, because once you start merging them, that's more difficult when you have to create summaries of the article and then put it into the next related article in the supplementary content area, for example. And then have a 301 and all those things.
Perfect. Then we have a question here from Hassan. So semantic SEO, maybe it's not a question, maybe it's just a statement. It's part of a conversation out there. Okay. Semantic SEO, yes. Like how to guess the contextual flow based on which criteria?
How to guess contextual flow based on which?
Maybe I just took. Maybe it's, this was what he first said here. How to set the order of the headings, like H2, H3, and
I think we covered that in the step number 7. It's all about the frequency of the things that mentioned, and the search demand, and also how important it is to your source context. So all these criteria are going to be taken into consideration, and then those criteria will be considered when applying heading levels, but also the order of the headings.
Then maybe this one was a little bit different. How you decide H1 and meta title about a node topic. /topic.
Probably will always try to put the main subject entity as early as possible, and if it's not an explicit question, then you'll probably have a semicolon, and then after that put maybe some of the most important attributes, or in this case, if we're talking about the types of wines, then that could be that main thing mentioned in the beginning, and then after semicolon, just put those different types, the most popular ones. If you're talking about, I don't know, how to do X, Y, and Z, then probably the title would be how to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Actually, I noticed that your H1s are much longer than what I would do, but it really makes sense. I think that's also been a little bit of a better understanding of how you actually structure your headings. So I will definitely work more with longer H1s. So we had a question here as well. Can glossary pages be a part of semantic content?
They could be, yeah. Depending on how you structure, let's say, the subtopical map of those glossary pages. But definitely, those could be.
Yeah, I mean, I think one page. If you are selling wine glasses, I would definitely have maybe one page for each type of wine glass. It could be because it's so important. But I guess it's also, again, as we come back to, it's about the source context. What's important for you to why do you have the website, right? I mean, that's also one a part of this. And not a question, but just thank you to you, Germans, for this valuable information. I think I think for me was really, really a great experience, and it also seemed like there's a third session in the making for next year. So just digging a hole for yourself, having to develop 60 more slides, I guess, in the future.
But I mean, it was also a learning experience for me, because whenever there is a need for these slides, then you learned something new as well. But I hope it wasn't.
That's why I'm doing these LinkedIn lives.
Yeah.
It's just for myself. I mean, it's great that everybody's looking into. You have your questions, but I'm really trying to learn in these sessions.
I hope it wasn't too overwhelming. When I start to get excited about these things, I tend to go very fast. So, but thank you for stopping me.
Excellent. No, I think, but also, guys, you the ones who asked for it, you will get the slides here afterwards. So you can dig more into German's thoughts here. Should we take? Well, there's a couple of questions here. Let's take them, Germans. Can you share some insights regarding algorithmic rules for writing the articles?
There are some publicly shared ones, but a lot of them are, let's say, not so publicly shared. But those that are, you can easily find them, like in some of the case studies. Also, of course, I think there are a few. But the most, let's say, important ones for me would be to match the question and answer format. So when you're giving the answer to the question, match the verbs, nouns, predicates, and so on, and give the most direct answer as soon as possible. And some rules about internal linking as well. I mean, we need the whole webinar for that. There are 200 rules. We cannot, but like really paying attention to the most, to the first sentence after the heading. That's one of the most important rules, I would say.
I think also people, when they're listening to this, Germans, they think, okay, where's the magic pill? Where's the where's the hack in this? But actually, it's also about the more knowledge you build up, the more difficult it will be for competitors to enter, right? So, of course, if you're doing the content briefs, which are as detailed as what we are recommending in this session, you're actually also building up a lot of competitive edge when it comes to somebody else trying to beat you for the type of wine glasses or whatever niche you are in.
Mm-hmm. Also, maybe how Christian here says that you have to consider the return, right? And absolutely. And I would not recommend this approach if you're only fighting in, let's say, Danish local market. It's not needed.
No.
Basic content and links. I mean, that's all
I
you need.
mean, if you're a local plumber, it's just a totally different ball game. So that's of course. But of course, if you're on the finance niche, there's no way around it, right? It's part of the playbook.
All my life, I've been just working with English markets, and there it really works. But then again, I see that in some local markets, these rules even are not necessary, or even you might do more harm, or maybe not necessarily harm, but it's not going to be visible, since also the algorithms there in those languages are not that advanced to understand your content. So you're maybe doing it for the future, but when is that future going to come? When is the Google going to invest in those algorithms to understand your content in that language? While in English, it's working really good.
Yeah, and I mean, you can start at a lower level of content, and then you can build it up over time. When new competitors come into the field, I think it's also a matter of moving fast in different niches. So that's part of it as well in the consideration. Let's take this one here. Let's take this as the last question, Germans. Thank you for all the the great questions, and maybe you can still continue in the chat if you have more questions. So how to create local brief, like you will target city in macro context or in micro context? Any example you can share?
I have some examples, but I would be okay to share them privately, not not publicly. But definitely certain attributes like this service, yeah, the whole service needs to be defined, and also the location in connection to that service need to be defined in your topical map, and also then in those pages. But of course, if you're talking about local service, then certain attributes need to be. It's still very much going to be the same, similar service page that you would have. Typically with the conversion point in the hero section, let's say, with all the most important things there about the price, about how the service is delivered and so on, and how to then call or submit a form to get a quote or whatnot. But then you would have more of that informational content lower in the lower part of the page. So you have action plus the information in that type of page.
Excellent. I think we will round it off here. Thanks a lot for attending this session, the last one of the year. The sun is shining in Denmark, as you can see. I should wear sunglasses for these sessions. But thank you, Germans. If you could just stay online, and
Yep.
everyone
Thank
else,
you.
thanks a lot for your time.